Awesome. Hi, everybody. So happy to see you all in here today and joining us virtually. Before we get started, we're going to have a little bit of a panel discussion at the end of this today because you guys just don't need to listen to me talk anymore. That's just the honest truth. But I'm really excited to be here today with another one of my hats on. Like Emily said, the D&I Working Group at ASWF was something that we felt was really foundational to the software foundation, separate from all the amazing code that we produce every day. The foundation is a place where anybody can come and be welcome and be happy and kind of contribute what they bring to the table. And that's not just code. It comes in a lot of different forms and aspects. So instead of me talking a little bit to tell you a little bit about how people feel about the group and stuff that we've done, we put together a little bit of a video from some of our group members. So I hope you enjoy.
Hello. My name is Caitlin Pollock, and I'm the lead technical director with DreamWorks Foundation. I've been involved with the Academy Software Foundation's Diversity and Inclusion Group for just over a year now.
I'm T.Y. Allison from the Pro Workflow team at Apple.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Kramer, and you can call me Furby. I am a PhD student at the University of Florida.
My name is Tom Zenner. I'm a lead technical director at ILM.
My name is Jackie Cooper, and I'm co-founder of CG Pro, a virtual production system.
Mike Jutan here from Industrial Light and Magic. I am a senior software engineer in the Stagecraft group, and I am a mentor for the Academy Software Foundation's Diversity and Inclusion Summer Learning Program.
Hi, my name is Aliza Carpio, and I'm tech evangelist at Autodesk. I'm also a member of the Academy Software Foundation's Diversity and Inclusion Working Group.
Hi, my name is Naren Vadapalli, a software consultant working primarily for Spire Animation Studios in the areas of pipeline and infrastructure.
It's been a wonderful experience to be part of the ASWF Summer Learning Program for the last 2 years as a mentor. I'm a big champion of diversity and inclusion in all aspects of our life, and we don't choose where we're born or who our parents are, and the color of our skin. It's just pure luck, and I don't think anyone should feel left behind or treated differently because of that. I believe diverse teams bring different perspectives, and with that, we can challenge the status quo, and challenging the status quo allows innovation to happen.
I'm passionate about diversity in the ASWF and computer graphics communities because I've seen firsthand the difference a diverse team makes when developing and stories.
This initiative is important to me because everyone deserves to feel comfortable, supported, and encouraged in their chosen field. I owe part of my own success and love of my work to finding an undergrad computer science concentration that was half women, and a work position that has far more female representation than most technical roles. An inclusive environment shouldn't be something unique to particular roles, though. The talent is out there, there's no shortage of that, so it's up to us to put in the effort to introduce the possibilities and opportunities to new talent, and work to make it an inclusive and comfortable working environment for our colleagues.
I actually became an intern for a visual effects house, and with the help of a kind woman, I got my first internship, but I think without her help, I wouldn't have made it in the film industry. So I'm passionate about paying it forward, and I really would love some help in telling more diverse stories.
And to me, the DEI initiative at ASWF, and in computer science in general, means instead of a select few being able to tell everybody's story, everyone gets to tell their own story. And instead of work inspired by the different ways that different people think, we actually get to benefit from the unique ingenuity that those different thought processes come up with.
I've seen many times as a professional in this industry for a long time that when you have a room of very different people that come from lots of different backgrounds, you have much more interesting and creative solutions to the many wonderful problems that we have in visual effects. So it really brings a lot of depth to the work that we do, and I am a huge supporter of it.
And for me, this is an important community because not only is it about providing a neutral forum to coordinate cross-functional efforts, establish best practices, and share resources across motion picture and broader media industries, it is also so critical that all of our voices, thought leadership, are heard and are included. And that's partly why I'm part of this group. And I'm really proud to be part of an organization where all of its members are dedicated to creating a community.
Academy Software Foundation is a great forum that blurs the barriers to entry and opens up gates for anyone who can contribute to the open source projects that better the animation and VFX pipelines and workflows. Proud to be part of the group and looking forward to helping out as much as I can.
That's pretty cool, yeah? See if I can, there we go. Fun video, right? Thanks to everybody that contributed that. It was a last minute kind of effort to just talk to some people that couldn't be here in person today and to get some other diverse faces on the screen versus just Rachel and I, as much as we love talking to you all. So a few things about the D&I Working Group, just to start us off with some context on what we do. We started a while ago now, it's been a while, as a recognition from the ASWF board, and I think that that's really important that this came from the leaders of this organization, recognizing that this was a need for our industry. And so we took their lead, they asked us to lead this group, and here we are. Let's see, go next. We did some surveys and they weren't surprising, and it was more just like we're a data-driven organization and industry, and so having some things to back us up and tell us where we were and how much we had room to improve just in bringing diverse ideas and people into the projects that we work on, and that's just going to enable us to tell better stories like the folks talked about in the video. We had a few goals that Rachel and I put together that are our pillars of sort of how we organize the work in our group. The first being diversity within the ASWF. And so we're going to have a panel in a little bit where we're going to talk about a couple initiatives within that space, one of which being the Governing Board Succession Plan that we just released earlier this year. The second pillar is our guidance for members. So what can we do and put out into the space as the D&I Working Group for the ASWF to help educate folks on the space and just learn something new and something different that they haven't encountered before. So that looks like right now, it looks like our D&I landing page on the ASWF website, where we've got a few resources, and we're working on a revamp of that coming soon. As well as our blog, where we talk about topics, and we encourage folks from our group and from the Software Foundation, and really honestly whomever, to write about an inclusion topic that's important to them, and express their feelings that way, and educate the rest of the ASWF members. And then the third pillar is student education, and so bringing new up-and-coming talent into our industry and ways in which we can do that and promote software and software for making movies as a really cool place to get involved and a cool place to work and put your talents. And one of those programs we'll talk about in detail today is our summer learning program, which is led by our fearless Karen. So she's going to talk a lot about that today. We just finished that program today, and I don't want to put them on the spot, but we've got a couple of our SLPs here live in the audience, which is great. Really excited to have them here today. We'll talk more about that program in our panel. And I think that that's all I'm going to talk. And we've got on our panel today, we've got Aliza Carpio from Autodesk remotely. We've got Mike Ford, who I'm going to invite up on the stage, is here in person with us today. And we've got Karen from DeSales University, as well as Rachel Rose, who is my co-chair for the D&I Working Group. So I'm going to hand over to Rachel for some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carol. I am super excited that I get to moderate this amazing panel. We're going to see how this works with this mix between in-person and virtual in terms of a panel, but we'll do our best here. So I'm going to take a moment and just ask our three panelists, Aliza, Karen, and Mike, to introduce themselves. If you can give us your name, as well as your title at your company, which I know we've already discussed a little bit about, but and also how you are involved in the Academy Software Foundation. Aliza, do you want to start first?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Aliza Carpio. I'm Director of Tech Evangelism at Autodesk. And in terms of how am I involved, I feel like I do a lot of little things, and maybe they all come together to a bigger thing. But I definitely, in general, share opportunities of how we can increase diversity in contributing into open source. And whatever I learned, to be honest, at ASWF, I bring back to Autodesk and the other way around. But specifically, I help with the monthly community meetings and conference presentations. And if y'all have not seen, we are going to have our on-demand session. That was also another panel from the ASWF working group, Diversity and Inclusion Working Group. So please do check that out. And I'm definitely involved in conference presentations. I've been on the behind the scenes blog, and I'm hoping to help with the website for D&I as we revamp it. So I guess I'll pass it on to Mike and then Karen.
All right, I'm Mike Ford. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Sony Pictures Imageworks, and I'm also representing Sony on the governing board for the Academy Software Foundation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Ruggles. I teach at DeSales University as an Associate Professor of Computer Science.
Uh-oh. That was a very strong statement. It froze the computer. I'm sure she'll come back. But in the meantime, you know, I've had an amazing opportunity being able to work with all three of you. Oh, there we go.
So really excited. Really excited to contribute as much as I can, specifically in that branch of students making their journey into the industry and learning more about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, so like I was saying, I feel really lucky to have been able to work pretty closely with all three of you as members of the D&I Working Group. So the first thing I wanted to ask you actually was, why did you originally get involved with the D&I Working Group? I don't know that I've ever asked you that question. Karen, I don't know if you want to go first.
Sure, yeah. I attended SIGGRAPH a couple years ago, heard Carol and Rachel talk about this initiative, and got on the Slack channel. And, you know, as an academic, not a contributor to these spaces, I felt a little bit out of my element, but the community is just so welcoming. And I think I heard Carol say it before, that no matter what area you contribute to, you still have something to contribute. So even though I'm not, you know, coding, I can still help organize different events and contribute in the way that works best for me. So I definitely encourage anybody who's out there who's sort of on the fence about, well, how this sounds really great, I want to be involved, but I don't know what to do. Maybe your on-ramp is the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, rather than being that hard coder to start out.
That's awesome. I love that. Aliza, how did you get involved?
So I got involved when I started at Autodesk, which was, gosh, it's going to be 1 year at Autodesk now this month. And I learned I learned about ASWF from a couple of colleagues. That's Gordon Bradley and Doug Walker, who were already involved in ASWF in the various working groups. And I really loved what they said about ASWF. Not only is it a community where you can learn from each other, but you're heard. And together you can make decisions and you can share knowledge. And in a way, you're getting better at your craft, but you're also solving some really critical things for your customers. And it really intrigued me. And so I checked out the site. And because I'm so passionate about increasing the diversity in open source in general, I was like, I'm going to join the D&I group. No one else is here. I'm going to do it. And so and it's been such a welcoming group. And I'm really just, again, proud to be a part of it. Mike?
Excellent. I'll pass it on to you, Mike.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think for me, being involved in this group, I think I attended the first meeting and I was like, this is exactly what sort of matches what we were doing at Imageworks, is really looking for ways of talking about it and really exposing people to just how important diversity and inclusion is, not only for this industry, but for people that are obviously on the outside looking into our industry and saying, hey, I want to be a part of that. Because I think part of this is you have to be a leader in the space and start talking about it in order for people to even feel comfortable coming in and being a part of this industry. It's really, that's one of the things that we're trying to do. And this group in and of itself really represents a lot of diverse voices and a lot of, it's just been it's been a great sort of example of what not only the Academy Software Foundation has been doing more broadly with software, but just in terms of people. You can't have software without people. and it's great to have a more diverse group of people to be able to do that with.
Awesome. I love the connection to Sony. That actually leads me to a question for Aliza. As someone who works with a lot of different industry companies, I wonder what role you see the Academy Software Foundation's diversity and inclusion efforts having on the actual member companies that we have within the organization.
Gosh, okay, first of all, this is not an easy question to answer. I mean, it's that there's a lot to think about here. So let me start with how I think about ASWF. ASWF for me is an overarching community. It's a community of practice that enables access to thought leaders and resources, but it also enables amazing connections, right? And it's a great example, again, of that community of practice. But in the D&I space, I really believe ASWF is poised perfectly to be that role model for what it means to be inclusive and create an environment where all of us can thrive at all levels. And for example, I know Karen, this is Karen is the leader of this. I definitely helped with the submission process, but man, that summer learning program was probably one of my most favorite times of, and by the way, it's really hard. And I know there's some SLPs out there today, but man, it was really hard to figure out who was going to be part of that program. But those are really just great examples. But what I've learned about being part of this working group is that there are all these aspects of diversity beyond gender and race. And I think many times companies, tech companies and other organizations stop short of what we mean when we say diversity, or what that word or being inclusive, what that all means. In fact, in being part of ASWF's D&I Working Group, I learned about neurodiversity. And I think we need to stop thinking that diversity is very specific and very narrow when there's so much to be considered. So I see ASWF as a thought leadership entity. I don't even know if that's a word, but that's what I'm going to say. And it's really through this collective knowledge across the industries of teaching others, mentoring and guiding that I think we play a very, it's a pivotal role. And I think every one of us, every company, whether it's Autodesk or another company, can really learn, but also take that learning and amplify it within our own respective communities.
I love your emphasis on learning. Obviously, that's a really big thing within our working group. Karen, I often hear from students that I talk to that they don't even know that this industry exists for them to be able to get into. How do you feel the ASWF can help with this particular challenge?
I think that's a great question, and one that we in the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group have been looking to kind of crack that nut over the past couple of years. So rather than, just kind of be academic about it and sit back and think and just kind of analyze the problem, we took action. And part of that action was the webinar series that we opened up for anybody who wanted to sign up, and just putting education out there to say, this is a job in the industry, and here's somebody to talk to you about that. And I saw some people in chat who were some of those people who presented and told and shared their story. And we got a lot of great feedback from that webinar series. It's still available for free on the Linux Foundation kind of learning capsule site. So I encourage everybody to look that up, share it with people who you think might be interested in exploring these different ideas. And that's one thing that I see with my students is, they don't know that this is an opportunity, that they can take art and they can take technology, bring them together and pursue what they were built to do. And that's one piece that we have also been trying with the summer learning program, the SLP. Over the summer, we, as Aliza was alluding to, we market internationally to try to get a certain cohort together of about 20 people. Usually they're students, but I usually end up saying student, but it could be anybody at any point in their career. But a lot of times they are either pursuing their undergraduate degree or just out of college, and maybe they're computer science majors and they never heard Maya before, or they took a class in Maya, but they have their roots really in that computer science field. So that opportunity is a bridge for them to be connected with a mentor in the industry, a one-on-one mentor, to ask their questions and also to develop their skills and to have their cohort of their peers who might be their coworkers someday. So it's a really valuable program that I love. It's one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about. You know, I'm excited to push that initiative forward next year. We just, as Carol mentioned, we just finished up our SLP for this year, and we're already thinking about next year and what that's going to look like to keep building and growing.
Awesome. You know, Mike, you've, as a member of the governing board, you've been extraordinarily supportive of the things that we've been doing within the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, including a lot of the things that Karen and Aliza were just mentioning, you know, helping inform our member companies, as well as helping educate our, you know, students, traditional and non-traditional students. But I'm wondering what you think in terms of why diversity and inclusion is so imperative to the Academy Software Foundation itself, and how that feeds back into our mission.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critical to have, you know, for me, it's critical to have as many people working on these projects as possible. And I think that the most important thing is that there are a lot of opportunities out there for people to be able to do that. We just have to be able to find them and be able to reach them. And then once we reach them, we have to really be inclusive and speak to them kind of where they're at, just to be able to encourage them to sort of stay. And I think that that's really critical because we don't have enough people. I don't know if we know this, but there's kind of a talent shortage out there. And I think it's not only just in the industry that we work in, but I think just in general. And to me, there is such an opportunity to really find. It's a glow. I mean, it's the whole world. We can find this. We can find a number of people and a number of voices to be able to work on the projects that we have at the Academy Software Foundation, and then ultimately that bridges them into potentially working within our industry.
Awesome, I love that. I mean, now diving a little bit into some of the initiatives that we've been doing within the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, maybe I can start with you on this one, Mike. Can you talk a little bit about the recent initiative that you helped lead to create a governing board succession plan and how that feeds in with diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. With my co-chair, Annie Maltz, who's here. Part of this is what we were looking at is the Academy Software Foundation is not that old in terms of like, it's pretty new, but what we really started to see is that, you're already starting to see this, it's essentially sort of the same faces and the same people, and we all kind of know each other. And what we thought is for any board, and specifically for this group, specifically related to diversity and inclusion, let's come up with a succession plan that actually brings new voices into the group. So we established that most recently, so it's a 4-year term. And we've also established this idea of having alternates. So after 2 years into your governing board term, you can actually bring someone on as an alternate. And they're a voting member of the group. And we're really encouraging not only our alternates to be obviously we're trying to obviously diversify our group as well. And so that's just one of the plans that we have relative to succession, is that as we start to roll more and more new faces and new voices into our group, we're going to start to see some real change across the industry as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's, half of the problem, right, is providing those opportunities for diverse voices to be in the mix. I'm super proud of the fact that our organization has moved forward on that. Thanks.
Just real quick, I mean, you guys did a great job, both Rachel and Carol, in terms of supporting both Andy and I and the entire group with your perspective. And that census that we showed earlier was a product of the work that both of you did. And it obviously shows we've got a lot of work to do. There's no question about that. But we have to start somewhere. We have to have a baseline, and obviously we're heading in the right direction.
Awesome. Well said. You know, Karen, you already spoke a little bit about the SLP program, but I was wondering if you could dive a little bit deeper into exactly what it is. What are the pillars that we've been building that program around? And what are you excited about for the future in terms of where that might go?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I feel extremely passionate about, just having anybody find their passion. So I definitely have that in me. So as part of that, we recognized at the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group that our 3 pillars would be community. So building that community of like-minded individuals, the peer group, so we have our own Slack channel that students are engaging with each other, asking questions, sharing projects, and really enhancing that sense of self within their space. Even this past summer, a few SLPs shared that, they don't really have a lot of people in their area that can kind of speak the language that they speak. So just finding that affinity group, whatever it is really enlightening, and just a space of honor that I find with the SLP in providing that safe space for the SLPs. And then, so that's kind of one pillar. We do the education portion, so supporting students in their engagement of learning wherever they find their weak point is. So as I mentioned before, they might be ready to graduate with a computer science degree and maybe dabbled in Maya a little bit, but it was on their own, and it's Maya, so there's a lot to go wrong. So having that space to actually get more training that's a little bit more structured, and encouraging them to ask questions when things inevitably go wrong, so that they're more prepared for that initial interview for the technical roles that they're typically aiming for. And then the last pillar is the mentorship. So we have a lot of wonderful mentors who donate their time, and many of them are here today. And I can't thank you enough for just allowing that space, because it does mean the world to the SLPs. Many of them have reached out to me individually, saying that their confidence has been increased just by talking to someone. We talk to someone in the industry, and we have people all over the globe who feel like, in order to do this, they have to be in California. So it just felt so remote to them. And just having that access point encouraged them to keep going. And that's really the point of the SLP, is just to keep pushing for each one of those education, networking, whether it's peer or it's professional, to push your dream forward, because it absolutely is attainable. And I think that's the portion of that that confidence that helps the SLPs know that yes, they can do this, and yes, they do have a space, and yes, they do have a right to be there. Even if they don't see that person in the interview process, in the interview room, they can be that person, and they can pave that way. So I'm really excited to see where that will grow. We've had the SLP for the past 2 summers now, and we're looking to, I'm looking to structure that a little bit more, surprise, Rachel and Carol, and hopefully grow it, in the future as we try to solidify what it means for the ASWF, and how it can also, one hand wash the other, and really focus on that technical side of the technical artist that we're looking to cultivate, grow, and inevitably contribute to this magnificent organization that many of them are starting to call their home.
And I think I'm going to chime in real quick, Karen, and just put another thing on top of that from someone who's been a mentor for the SLP program for the last 2 years, that there's the other aspect of that it's an amazing program for the mentors as well, and how much you learn and get reinvigorated almost by talking to your mentee and learning from them, and remembering a little bit about why you got into this industry and why it's so cool. Sometimes we get a little burnt out,
a little jaded,
and it's such an amazing group of individuals, and lots of, as Rachel pointed out, lots of different walks of life, and just to see them come together and learn so much. And we got to see at the end of this year's program, we did a little meetup where they got to SLPs got to show what they worked on over the summer and talk about their experience, and it was just one of the coolest things I think of this year for me. So just want to highlight that as super grateful to you, Karen, for making all of this a reality, because we couldn't do it without you.
Yeah, I want to chime in with that too, because there's many times like Carol, Rachel, and I meet usually on Mondays just to kind of regroup and make sure that we're in line with, you know, expectations and everything. And sometimes it's a tough Monday to make, you know, and my kids are coming home because I'm on the East Coast, so it's like 5 p.m. and I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I can make this. I'm running home, and you know, I eventually do. I might be like 5 minutes late or something, and it's always just such a wonderful meeting to come out of. And I think that's just so emblematic of the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, that, you know, people take the time. And I think that's the intention, because you have to be intentional for diversity and inclusion to actually work. So to take that time, even when you're tired and like running late and, you know, like, oh, I'll be there in just a minute, I'm so sorry. And, you know, make it a priority, that's when it will shine. And that's when, you know, you just get reinvigorated. So whether it's the SLP or coming to the monthly meetings, joining in on Slack, any one of those things, that's an intention that we can all, you know, push towards to really keep that as a focus, that diversity inclusion is important to me. So I'm going to take the time to actually dedicate.
I could not have said that better. That Monday meeting is one of my favorites. It's always great to get together. I think that leads me to a question for Aliza. You know, you've been working a lot with us recently to help us get the word out about the things that we've been doing in diversity and inclusion in the working group. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what some of those efforts are. I know you mentioned one of them earlier, but it's a good time to plug it again.
Yeah.
And talk about what, you know, where we might be going here.
Right. I have to say, this is like the group that is it's just a group of people that I call Marvel, because for some reason we can put together a panel in like less than a week and get it done and get it recorded. But one of the things that I would say, and I love the word intentional that you used, Karen, is that for those of you that are staying through beyond open source days, is that 4 members of the Diversity Inclusion Working Group and I pre-recorded a panel on the discussion of what we can all do to support the efforts of creating and being intentional about increasing the diversity of contributions in open source. And the talk is titled Amplifying Inclusion in Open Source, Intentional Actions Everyone Can Take. I think many times we think it's a governing body that would be doing this, but really it's in each of us. You know, we each have to take that role to not only be involved, but be intentional about it. Summer learning program y'all are hearing about, but there was a few of us definitely that were like pounding the pavement, you know, trying to get folks to think about it, to consider it. And then we do have, I know I recently reread Bharati Rangarajan's blog on inclusive language and tech. And so blogging is another one of where we can actually share not only thought leadership, but share trends and what's going on out there. So I think we've got a lot of different things in terms of how we're putting ourselves out there. But I would say the best marketers are each one of the diversity and inclusion members, because we bring back what we learn from AESWF back to our organizations and our companies. It's definitely, like I'm going to echo that word intentional. It's definitely been an intentional effort, but it's one that's important. And as I even think about, you know, I still see that 6% percentage, 6 to 11% is still the number that I still see in terms of even just women in tech contributions into open source. And I'd love to really change that in the world globally in the open source community.
So awesome. So we're really interested in seeing if anyone has any questions for the panel. If I can't tell there, Carol, whether anyone has their hands up, but if.
Feel free to raise your hand.
If not, I have more questions, but.
Does anybody do we have any in the chat either, Emily? Okay. If you're watching online too and you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I think we've got a few minutes, right?
Well, why don't I start the next question and then let me know, like, give me a signal, Carol, when it. So I'm really interested, obviously, in where we're going to continue to go within the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group. This is something that Carol and I spend a lot of time talking about. So where do you hope to see the ASWF Diversity and Inclusion Working Group affecting change in the future? Where do you hope to see it? Yeah, anyone have an answer?
I can definitely chime in on that one. Just from the SLP standpoint, it's still a kind of tough nut to crack. I think Mike was talking about the shortage of talent. So, you know, part of that is the education, and part of that is also representation. So you have a lot of just people not being able to see themselves in tech. You know, there's a great report out, there's many reports out about specifically young girls in tech. There's a wonderful NPR, you know, segment about it. But I specifically am very passionate about socioeconomic status as a diversity kind of factor. And I usually call it the ticket to ride, right? So in order to be able to, you know, code, you have to have the computer, and many people don't have that. So how can, you know, 5G technology and cloud computing change that? So that's another topic that I'm very interested in pursuing, in trying to get access and that more inclusive environment to more people, because, you know, that the classroom environment might be one thing that's open for those schools that have computer labs, but it's, you know, if the more people that we can get exposed and feeling powerful and empowered about sitting down at a computer, the more diversity we'll be able to see from my vantage point. So for me, it's kind of the education sector, which is a long-term solution. I don't think there's really a short-term solution for that one, but I'm working on it. So I guess I'll let you know. But I'm excited to see how the ASWF is going to contribute to that, and I see that as a growth potential for the SLP in particular.
Yeah, I think the point that you're making about the technology divide is a big one, because I think we have to be able to solve that problem. I mean, it's pretty much a universal problem relative to getting people access to, I mean, you need to do a computer to do this kind of work, and whether it is, you know, whether it's wireless or whether it's done via a cloud computer, I think that's one of the things we can actually work on, is actually giving people the opportunity. So we got to tell them that it's there, and then even if they don't have access to it, is really giving them on a plate, hey, here's how you can do it. Because I know there's a lot of people that would love to work, obviously, in this business, and you know, whether it's entertainment or other businesses, but they just don't even think they can do it because they don't have a computer. So that's a perfect point. So how do we bridge that gap? That's a really that's a solvable problem, it feels like. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, there's a lot of wonderful organizations like Girls Who Code and different, even Discord chat, you know, like there's a lot of different channels and servers that can address that. There's so many resources on YouTube. So, you know, for me, it's you kind of have the access, but then the education and structure as well as confidence is another pillar that needs to be strengthened. Even in the SLP, these are people who have computer science degrees. In most cases, they're almost at the end, and they're like, well, I don't know, am I going to be successful? And they need that community, which is the ASWF. I mean, that's what it was founded on, is this community of like-minded people to shore up around them and say, of course you can do this. Look at what you have done so far, and like, you are the person to do this. So, you know, I always encourage the SLPs of like, anytime you need, you know, a cheerleader in your corner, please DM me. That is like what I'm called here to do. And I think that that's the missing piece, because there's plenty of times where you might have the access, but that you get in your own way, or you get in your own head, or you hit a bug in Maya and you're like, I don't know, I guess I'm not meant to do this. And it's just that community of telling everybody, like, of course you're going to hit that, and of course you're going to have a roadblock. It's just part of the fun.
We have one question from Zoom. So one final question, which is, what's the best first step that open source projects can take to welcome new folks into our projects?
Ooh, I'd like to take that one because this is something that I'm super passionate about. So there's a few things. One is that you need to think about and look at your documentation, and is it even on your repo, is it talking to people with a first use mindset, and not thinking about not making assumptions that people know where you're at. So your documentation should definitely have sample code. And if you can, if there's a reference app, share that, because people love to see, at least I know as an engineer, I love to see examples. The second is there are opportunities like Hacktoberfest, which make contributing to open source fun. And if you are an organization or a company that wants to do that, please do check it out. It's put together by DigitalOcean, but many companies do join that, and lots of people love it because not only do they get swag, but they get to go to different classes and training to understand what an open source project is all about and how to contribute. And then finally, in terms of inclusivity, and this is, I'm going to use one of the projects that is from an Amazon, one of the Amazon fashion engineers, and it's called Truffle Shuffle, and it's Katie Levy, and she has been on this journey to translate all of her documentation into different languages, and she gets the community to translate for her. And I would say language accessibility is so important to consider. And then finally, if you can, create a video and tell people about it, and tweet about it. But I would say first use would be the number one thing, meaning like think about the person reading it who doesn't know anything. What would they need to know? Make no assumptions, and think about the language, or the written language, and think about how, would others from another country be willing to be a part of this if I just added, Spanish or Arabic or something else.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for participating. We're going to do this one last slide over here. I should have moved this up here a little bit ago, but if you want to get involved, we've got our mailing list, and then we're on the ASWF Slack in the diversity channel. We meet monthly. Our meetings are on the ASWF calendar, but they're Wednesdays at noon Pacific. I think it's the second Wednesday of most months. I was like looking at Rachel, and it's like I just go and it's on my calendar. But we have a really great group that shows up on Zoom and talks about all these issues, and we've usually got a couple things on the agenda, but we also encourage our community members to bring up whatever they've got going on at the time and initiatives that they're interested in bringing to the table. And yeah, I think that's it for us. Thanks for all coming out today. Thanks a ton, and thanks ton to our virtual panelists. Great to see you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.